Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with the Average Joe Sports Show. It's USC week, but all we're talking about is Dana.
Hi, it's Bill Doleman. Got to let you know that Gary Sharp is on the road with the UNO men's basketball team. So it's just the three of us. And, you know, Nebraska's got a head start on the coaching carousel. Will it be a fun ride?
You say the three of us, the third one right here, Elijah Herbel. Let's get into expectations with this Husker offense. What can Dana Holgorsen realistically get fixed in only a week's time? We'll get into that on the Average Joe Sports Show.
Back into it. It is the midweek edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. That's Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, episode 69. Insert Joe. Can always subscribe. The Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Like and subscribe and tell a buddy. And also on Spotify and iTunes. It's where you go. What?
And what a disappointment. Let's clear the air with this first. Gary Sharp yet again on assignment, as he's currently traveling with the UNO men's basketball team yet again. They're headed out to Vegas, so things could be a lot worse for one Gary Sharp right now. Not a bad place to be spending your time at this time of year. But what a monumental show he's missing out on. Episode 69. That's a shame. I know that's how people at home should know. Like, Gary,
insert Billy Madison.
He wouldn't miss this show if it was up to him. So we do miss Gary yet again tonight. But Gary, his schedule gets busy this time of year, so he's off to Vegas.
Yeah, we appreciate Sharpie, and we'll just have to figure out how he handicapped Nebraska USC wandering into a sports book before tip-off. UNO, and it's got to be UNLV, right? They're at UNLV, I would assume.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I don't know how else they would be playing out there.
Do they have some sort of monument, Bill? As many Mountain West games as you've done, do they have some sort of monument, hanging towel, something for Tark?
You know, if there's anything at this stage, it's probably a bar stool.
Hot club?
I think it's a bar stool and Piero's, which is the best restaurant in Las Vegas. It's off the strip, just a ways down from the Hard Rock Hotel, and that was Tark's place. After a UNLV game, I happened to wander in there one night by accident and thought I'd walk back into the early 1960s, and just an amazing place, best food in town. But I was told while I was there that that's Tarkanian's place, and that after a UNLV game, Tarkanian would go into Piero's and would go to the bar, and if it took longer than a minute for a patron to order him a drink, then he owed the bartender $1. But if there was a drink waiting for him or it was under a minute, then the bartender owed Tarkanian $1. Charming little bet between two chums, but that was his place to go, was his Piero's.
Well, I don't know how Hollywood it was or real it was, but back when the Lakers were drafting Magic Johnson, Winning Time, the HBO miniseries, the friends in the desert did not want Tark to leave UNLV and take the Lakers job.
Yeah. Can you imagine what UNLV basketball would have been like in the NIL era? How much? Well, let's say UNLV basketball was already doing what they were doing.
Mary Johnson, Stacey Augmon, Greg Anderson, the 1990 title team.
Anderson Hunt, and if they were doing what they were doing and then NIL came into being, how far ahead of the game they would have been. I mean, they would have had payrolls that would be on par with the Spurs.
Oh, the payroll would be a $150,000 credit at the sports book.
I mean, now they're trying to play catch up with Kansas, who's been doing it forever. But imagine, though, if NIL in about 1991, they flipped a switch on it back then. Oh, my God. UNLV would have been the hotbed of basketball, and nobody would have ever caught up to them.
How perfect was the late great Ron Meyer coming from UNLV, set up with a payroll to meet at SMU in the late 70s.
That would be another one too that missed the NIL era by about
Ahead of their
3-4 decades. Yeah.
Ahead of their time. Well, let's talk Nebraska. Let's talk SC. Keeping with the desert theme, what, -9, 9.5? We don't know who's quarterbacking.
Down to 8.5 as of today.
Aha!
On a Wednesday.
Wow, movement.
Clock just passed 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, and I'm seeing 8.5.
Okay, so it is Nebraska. It is USC. It's two programs that, let's be honest, neither one of them are poised to win this thing Saturday, but someone's gotta. And it's been the week plus of Dana Holgorsen. Bill, Elijah, let's start with Dana. And I know we talked Sunday about some of the eyes that, Matt Rhule is going to bring in. And we were just wondering, what was going to happen with Nebraska. Was there going to be an announcement? Are you going to hang tight till the end of the season? Well, Matt Rhule moved forward and brought in a new offensive coordinator, a guy that's super accomplished, super talented, and seems to be a better fit with the talent that's on hand and Bill, the talent you want to keep on hand in this portal era.
It's interesting. We do our show on Sunday live, after games or, to get kind of the immediate reaction of the weekend. And we're first. And this is an instance where we are kind of on the back end of the fire. Now the embers are burning and people have had a chance to kind of think about this. We were at the press conference on Monday when Matt Rhule made, this announcement and it just kind of came out matter of factly that, Dana's going to call the plays on Saturday and we'll go forward. And, the eyes in the press conference were looking around and you could see people immediately dropping pens and going to Twitter and, getting the information out as soon as possible. And there was a lot of reaction in that room. And then there's a lot of reaction immediately on Twitter after the press conference, on sports talk shows like yours, Varsity Radio. And then Gary's on Tuesday morning. And now we're on the back end of this. And now we're actually talking about, Nebraska does play USC this weekend, which should be kind of a marquee matchup between two blue bloods, regardless of what their records are. It's still Nebraska and it's still USC. And yes, they are combined 9-9 on the year. But now we get a chance to kind of think back on, okay, what's going to happen, what's been talked about. And now we look forward a little bit now that the news has been delivered. And I just wonder how long, the great song by Ace, how long has this been going on? Right. Clearly, Marcus Satterfield has been calling the plays. Okay. And if he hasn't been calling the plays, we need to figure out what DEFCON number 1 or 5 is worse. Because if Dana Holgorsen's fingerprints are on Nebraska's play calling because he's been an analyst all season long, I would think that we got some issues. But based on the predictability that we've all talked about over the last several weeks and Nebraska's propensity to, crash the line for 1 and fall ahead for 2 or 3, I would say that if he has been doing any type of analysis, it's either fallen on deaf ears or he really has not been that influential in terms of what Nebraska's game planning. I'm talking about Holgorsen, what Nebraska's game planning is. So now here we are on the precipice of the game, and you wonder, okay, how long has he been looking at Nebraska's offense, understanding, what Dylan Raiola's strengths and weaknesses are, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the run game. Apparently the run game has been just inundated with plays and not very simplified. How do they work the tight end? So I think Dana Holgorsen has probably been looking at this for a lot longer than just Sunday or Monday when Matt Rhule made the announcement. I think it was kind of, are you comfortable with what we have? Do you know what you have with Dylan, with Fedoni, with the backs? Now's the time. And maybe they didn't want to do it, but after the performance at UCLA, they had to do it. But I got to believe Dana Holgorsen's been involved in this a lot longer than just Monday.
Elijah, I believe that let's go back in time for a moment with Matt Rhule talking about not sleeping well, and Dylan woke him up in the office super early in the morning. I think this has been on Matt Rhule's mind for a long time. You somehow got through last season, right, with backup quarterback and Ron Brown helping you figure out what the belly option is and the option pass, because that wasn't in Sat's playbook. And then you fast forward to just how inept your offense was and just how helter-skelter it was in overtime, right? The organization against Illinois, how brutal it was against Purdue in the first half. And then by Indiana week, you kind of had to look in the mirror and say, we better make a phone call if it doesn't get any better, giving your guy every opportunity to flip it around, and then finally having to pull the trigger during the bye week.
Well, let's go
as a possibility, as a contingency, going all the way back to January.
Well, let's go back even further. Yeah, you go back to January. That's whenever you're talking to Dana Holgorsen, and now you look back, that's Matt Rhule, I think, looking for oversight on his offensive coordinator, looking at what was on the field last year, seeing how limited that offense was, understanding you're bringing in a 5-star, immensely talented quarterback to come in and run your offense next year. And I think what that was is you're looking at your offense, and I think by talking to Holgorsen last winter, it kind of showed, maybe now looking back even more, you can see this. It showed, I think, a little bit of doubt within Matt Rhule about Marcus Satterfield's ability to go out there and handle this type of offense, the offense of a 5-star quarterback, the development of a 5-star quarterback. You bring in a guy in Dana Holgorsen that, if he knows anything better than just about anybody in the country, it's how to throw the football around, and it's how to develop NFL quarterbacks. Schmidt and I were talking before our show earlier today. We're looking up Case Keenum's statistics at Houston. Like, case in point, Case Keenum's senior year at Houston, the numbers that he put up in 12, 13 games, if you count the bowl, would have been better than any NFL quarterback has ever done in 16 games. 5,600 yards in the air Case Keenum put up, and I think the number was 48 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Like, you have a guy in Dana Holgorsen that not only did it with Case Keenum, did it with a guy in Geno Smith as well. You go back to Oklahoma State, Brandon Weeden put up some gaudy numbers as well. Like, if there's anything Dana Holgorsen knows, it's how to get the best out of his quarterback and turn them into an NFL-type player. That's what Dana Holgorsen knows. I think Matt Rhule knew that's not Marcus Satterfield's strength. So going back to January, you try to bring in Holgorsen. Holgorsen, for whatever reason, we could dive into the rumors if we want. I don't want to. For whatever reason, we'll just say, chooses not to take the job. He goes and takes a similar consulting role at TCU to what was probably offered to him here at Nebraska. And now you reach the end of the season, and the doubts that you had as a head coach last offseason, I think, came to fruition this year, and it's the first call you're going to make. You're going to make it Dana Holgorsen. His job now, come in. It's not just calling plays on Saturday. It's about finding what your offense does well. It's about cleaning up the operation behind the scenes with your position coaches, with your meetings all week long. It's holistic, Dana. Come in, fix the offense, set up the offense how you would want the offense to be set up, understanding that Dana Holgorsen's a guy that can draw on his years and years of experience, both as a head coach and as an offensive coordinator to understand what you can do in 10 days' time. That's the task right now. But, like, Holgorsen's got his work cut out for him. And when you go back, like, I think there's a reason why there was probably oversight wanted with this offense. And now instead of oversight, it's Dana Holgorsen coming in and cleaning up the entire operation himself. That's what it is to me.
What you have here and now until you made the change, you have 3 games left to change this advertisement. What you have now is a bad advertisement of an offense with a 5-star, with some pretty high-profile, proven statistical winners in Banks, in Nayor. All right. This screws up your plan. This screws up your timeline. This screws up your process that you preach because you want to see results from the process to your locker room, to your team. And it screws up your progress. And it screws up your athletic director who has got to go get money for revenue sharing. And it screws up year 3. It screws up the fan base. It screws up the faith level because this is not his fault, but his reality of 2 decades of seeing this movie before. And you had to absolutely act. And I'll say this, and this is just speculation. I have no inside knowledge, but he went out and he knows defense, and he was very honest on Monday. Coach Rhule was. He knows defense. He knows defensive personnel. And he went out of his comfort zone and he went and got Tony White. And Tony White's been phenomenal, right? It's not always been great, but it's been good enough to win about every ball game they've been in except for Indiana, right? They've allowed a finite amount of points where some of those games are winnable if you have an offense at all. And I think Rhule would have gone more of the Tony White route, not buddy hires, not familiar hires, not let me groom some folks and pay it forward, teach some young guys hires, if he could have. And I just don't know the excitement level for some of the folks he probably reached out to for his initial staff of working with Satterfield. Because if you're Jake Peets, you're sticking in the NFL. You did that. Great paycheck, a little volatile with, how you can be hired and fired in the NFL. It's that way in college too. Mickey Joseph. Who knows if Mickey would have gotten an offer to stay as some sort of passing game coordinator, some title, another bump. Mickey can recruit. Mickey can coach. Mickey's putting guys into the NFL left and right as your receivers coach. So what he started with his offensive staff were a lot of those guys choice B, C, or D because he just couldn't get what he wanted initially. And, oh, by the way, you're hired, go get signing day handled. Get signing day handled and get winter conditioning underway. So I think all of that's very much a possibility to where we're at right now.
Oh, and don't forget he hired Bob Wager.
Yeah.
Remember Bob Wager coaching tight ends for a few months, and he hit the Jack Del Rio Highway. And
Georgia's on the phone to both of them.
So, look, this goes into the chapter of the book that will never be written. The hiring of Bill Callahan, the hiring of Bo Pelini, the hiring of Scott Frost, Mike Riley, and the putting together of the staff of Matt Rhule. We can talk about it. We can speculate about it, how it all came together. Marcus Satterfield, when he got hired, there were question marks. People are looking at South Carolina's numbers and then Tennessee Tech's numbers, and he had a decent year once at Temple. And okay, well, we're going to trust Matt Rhule on bringing him in, and then you've got the paper boy coming in as the receivers coach for the first time, and by all accounts, his obviously his background with his dad and his football knowledge is incredible. He's been the translator to Dana Holgorsen for whatever is in the playbook, even though Marcus Satterfield is still around. Don't you find that odd? Well, fortunately, McGuire is still here to translate the playbook to Dana Holgorsen. Isn't that what you got on Monday? Was it he's the translator?
You got he's going to get him up to speed. Glenn Thomas was brought in just like he was at Baylor, and then he was handed off to at Temple when Satterfield went to Tennessee Tech. And Satterfield, I don't know, bless his heart, I don't know if he survives at South Carolina.
Right.
So.
Right. People have been speculating that from day one, since November 23rd, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So look, I think that they are going to have an all for one for all cliche that right there. I think this staff is going to understand we've got 3 more games together. We owe it to each other. We owe it to these players, and we owe it to these fans that I care most about. That we have got to get this together for 3 weeks. Now, we may not have a lot of camaraderie and chemistry right now on this staff. Tom Osborne had some very, very different personalities on his staff, but there was a cohesiveness with that group. You might have somebody come in and Kevin Steele coming in, he had his eyes set on a higher prize. But, Milton, Dan, for the most part, they weren't going anywhere. Charlie was settled. Crazy Uncle George was never going to leave. Turner Gill was the loyal lieutenant. Ron Brown, very much a man of faith in line with Tom. But they had a unique cast of characters. But there was a chemistry amongst them. Frank Solich, the ultimate football coach.
They were all great at their job.
Right. But they were great, and they had a leader that they all believed in, and they had very good situations, and they did not want to leave that. But now you've got a group that I think there's probably some fractures in the wall in terms of the chemistry, but they've got to rally together for 3 games. And I would think that they would be mature enough, professional enough to understand that. And this, the bringing in of Dana Holgorsen, I would think, sends a message to all of them that, it is not about us in this room and even all of us in this locker room. It is about the 1.9 million people who have invested heartily into this program, unlike any other in the country. And we are the caretakers of it right now. And we owe those people 3 great games and hopefully a 4th. And then we can sort all this out after January. And I know it's not National Letter of Intent Signing Day anymore. It's financial agreement day, but these guys have to put aside whatever differences philosophically, personally that they have, and they got to come together. I'm not, it's interesting too, and I'm sorry to go on, but people have been talking about how odd this move is, at this stage of the season. And I kind of see that, but I'm thinking this is where we are with college football. They wanted to create the NFL in college. And, what was it, a year ago that, Ken Dorsey, or 2 years ago, Ken Dorsey was the great offensive coordinating mind with Josh Allen at quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. A year later, he's out of a job, and Joe Brady, who, oh, by the way, was an offensive coordinator for Matt Rhule at Carolina until he got fired midseason. It happens, and that's the way it is in the NFL. And for me, I'm just looking at this going, it's the way they do it in the pros, and this is where we're headed. So why is this a surprise to anybody?
Well, it's reality right now, because when the season ends, look at the calendar. You have, a week and change before signing day. When you're trying to flip recruits and keep guys in the boat, and there's going to be other coaches around the country calling your guys, and a couple days before signing day, the guy that recruited me just got fired.
Right. Yeah.
Just got fired. I know nothing about this new guy who's coming in here, but I do have a long-standing relationship with this coach across the country that is now calling my phone nonstop saying, hey, we got a spot for you. It's just the reality of football right now that you have a better chance to be able to put 3 weeks on film and, hey, 3 weeks to build a relationship, or 3 weeks to call up that recruit that might be at risk of flipping and say, this is why we brought this guy in. I want you to look at the offense over the next 3 weeks. We still have a plan for you. I mean, it just gives you more of a runway with recruiting, whereas if you fire a guy postseason, which is what we know, Matt Rhule, whenever he fires coaches, that's what he does. Marcus Satterfield has not been fired, it should be noted. This new rule at the NCAA gives you the ability, but it gives you a chance to now, instead of being rushed after you finish up on Black Friday and now you got a couple of days for signing day, it gives you the chance now to turn around after Black Friday and say, hey, 3 weeks under this new offensive coordinator, here's what it looks like, here's the plan we have in place. It just, from a timing point of view, it's what you got to start doing in college football with how condensed that calendar gets in the month of December, especially considering Nebraska is still playing for a bowl game right now. And if you add, I know Nebraska hasn't had to worry about this for a while, but you have to add bowl prep into that time as well, getting ready for what could be an important game if Nebraska does get to 6.
And keep this in mind, though, too. Sorry, Schmidt, but keep this in mind, too. You didn't just get rid of or change your play calling duties from Marcus Satterfield to another guy. Look what the Chicago Bears did this week. They fired their offensive coordinator, whom nobody really knows, and they bring in another guy who nobody really knows. They're having to explain who these guys are. Well, he was with Seattle for a while and was there for a year, and now he's here, and we got Nebraska brought in Dana Holgorsen. This is not Nick Saban. It is not, one of the bigger names in the business, but it is somebody who is a very prominent name in college football. So it's recognizable. And so you're right, Elijah, that for the next few weeks as recruiting goes on, and again, it's no longer letter of intent signing day. It's financial aid package day. Let's just call it what it should be. Contracts, right? 1-year deal, 2-year deal, 3-year deal, whatever. This just needs to be contracts. But Nebraska is turning their attention to a guy that most everybody in college football has been familiar with for the past decade plus, for what he did at Texas Tech as an assistant coach under one of the biggest names in college football, Mike Leach. He was a head coach at Houston, with a coach of Whedon at Oklahoma State, or Case Keenum or whatever. He was the head coach at West Virginia. So it's prominent. People know who this guy is. They know what he has done. And that does give Nebraska a little bit of a head start going into the next coaching cycle. Now, does he want to coach again? Does he want to be a head coach? Who knows? He might be like Chip Kelly, thinking, I don't want to deal with NIL. I don't want to deal with financial aid packages. I don't want to deal with the transfer portal. I just want to coach ball for a little while. And I got a place that's probably going to pay me $2 million, I would bet. If you're paying Marcus Satterfield 1.4, I would think if you're Dana Holgorsen, you're saying, I'll finish out this year for 5 and I'll take the job for 2. If I'm him, that's what I would do. And I don't have to necessarily be the CEO right now. Maybe that's what I want to do in the future. But right now, this is a pretty good gig. And I get Nebraska, and I get this 5-star guy, and I do this for a year or two. I'm setting myself pretty good for my later 50s and, for the next, big job that comes along once the rules have kind of been put into place.
And there's casinos everywhere in the state. which is nails. You got to show guys on your roster. You're not jacking around anymore. And if you're Dana, it's also 3 weeks for the guys on this offensive staff that aren't Satterfield.
Yep. That.
Show your work.
That's where I was going to go.
Get your position group in order and go play some ball.
Did anyone notice Monday at the press conference, Matt Rhule got up there and he made a point of saying how impressed Dana was with the offensive staff whenever he showed up. Not a coincidence, in my opinion. I do want to dive into something here really fast. Something that's been on my mind. Nebraska's offense was not unique when compared to the defense in the type of position coaches they brought in. Guys that were a little bit lower on experience, guys that Matt Rhule had a lot of belief in. The defense had that as well. I mean, Dvorak showed up, minimal coaching experience. Terrence Knighton showed up, hadn't coached before, at least being a position coach himself, hadn't done it before. Evan Cooper was a bit of an exception, but he had been with Rhule for a while and had a lot of responsibility, so he's a bit of an exception. But, we don't complain about the work of Dvorak and the work of Knighton the same way that you turn around and look at the offense and say, man, this young guy, Garrett McGuire, he must not know what he's doing. Man, doubts about Donovan Ryle. That offensive line isn't up to snuff right now. I just think that's a little bit interesting that the side of the ball where the inexperienced coaches are getting quote-unquote exposed is just the offense. It kind of makes you wonder what is going on behind the scenes in that offensive room with Marcus Satterfield at the top, because there hasn't been complaints about, at least widespread, Terrence Knighton's not getting the job done. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's never coached before. Or Dvorak, man, that guy's young. He doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't even finish his college career. You don't hear that offensively, or you don't hear that defensively, but you hear it a lot offensively.
You don't see it.
And so I think that's part of the job for Holgorsen coming in here, and I think that's why Matt Rhule mentions it on Mondays. I still think he has belief in those position coaches that he has. I truly believe that that's one of the reasons why he's getting up there in front of the media and saying that on Monday, because he has got belief and he wants to see what those guys can do with a guy like Holgorsen, who's been around the block and has developed his fair share of coaches that have worked under him through the years. That's kind of the benefit of having a guy in Holgorsen that's been a high-level head coach. Is it's not his first time dealing with assistant coaches below him and having to mentor those guys up. I think that's going to be a big part of the job for Holgorsen if he is here long-term, but even over the next 3 weeks, because that vote of confidence from Matt Rhule you heard in the press conference, I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's Matt Rhule just saying it. I don't think it's Matt Rhule putting some tape out there so other coaches, if he does have to make moves, are going, oh, well, Matt Rhule, Dana Holgorsen thinks these guys are great. They must be great for me. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a vote of confidence from Matt Rhule in a Monday press conference saying, I want to see what you guys can do with a different guy in charge of your room.
Who's going to help you be your best? What's he going to demand? What can you perform? Can everybody get on the same page, right? This is what Dana's going to call. This is Dana's feel in game. This is what happens after the script. Here's the game plan. Okay, here are your marching orders for your offensive line. Here's your marching order for your running back room. Here's your marching orders for the wide receivers and tight ends. Go handle it. Was that being carried out by the guys under Satterfield? And was Satterfield given marching out orders out? And if he was, were they being accepted and worked on together? So Nebraska could score points after halftime. Didn't look like it. It's Average Joe Sports Show here, episode 69. That's Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, the AJ Sports Pods, where you can follow on Twitter. It's been a bit of a reality show. It's been a bit of a soap opera, and the drama has been handled, or it's been pretty well in-house with just how things are run. Rhule does run a tight ship with things, and, you know, all the things you mentioned, Bill, for the state, for the players, for the fan base. I mean, you want 6 and beyond, right? Just go play good football. Give it your best effort. Go play good football and see where the chips fall. Let's talk Nebraska USC. What the hell you guys expected on Saturday? Do you feel good about what Saturday can become? Elijah, you're going out to Malibu, then you're going out to Compton, and then you're going to USC.
Watts.
You're going to go Watts. Okay.
Watts, Compton. Yeah, I'm hitting the whole scenic route out there.
Yeah, just go down to Tijuana then. What the hell? Why you?
Because my rental car doesn't let me cross the border. I already looked into it.
Okay. Well, grab a burro.
You can't cross the border. No balloons. Elijah, you're looking a little pale. Shut up.
I think it's an interesting question, though. What do you expect? I'm expecting to throw my expectations out the window with both teams. USC's making a pretty big change at quarterback, which that is the most important position on an offense, especially given what USC likes to do, what Lincoln Riley likes to do offensively. That's a massive switch. I think they're going to be working behind the scenes on, okay, what does this guy do well? What can we bring to the forefront? I think if you're Tony White, you're probably a little bit nervous this week looking at USC's offense going, I don't know what they're going to line up and do on Saturday. But you flip it around, and there's got to be nobody who's more scared than Lynn, the USC defensive coordinator. Not only does he not know what Nebraska's offense might look like on Saturday, he doesn't even know who the quarterback's going to be. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see either 10 or 15 march out there on Saturday and be taking snaps behind center. Like, neither guy would surprise me. And in terms of what Nebraska's offense looks like, you know what? It might look a lot like Marcus Satterfield's offense, but I wouldn't be shocked if you go in and look at it and say, that looks a lot more like a Dana Holgorsen offense than I was expecting. Like, in terms of what Nebraska's offense looks like, I don't know. In terms of what Nebraska defense you get, they've been Jekyll and Hyde this year. I don't know. What USC do you get? They've been better at home this year, but now they're making a change at quarterback, and you don't quite know what that's going to look like. I'm throwing expectations out the window this week. Like, whatever my prediction ends up being, you can burn it. It's not going to matter. I don't know what it's going to look like on Saturday. It's my job to give you my analysis, and I wish my analysis was better. But my analysis is talk to me about 5 p.m. on Saturday, and I'll give you my thoughts, because I don't know.
I'm gonna see streamlined offense. I'm gonna see less personnel groups. I'm gonna see less players on offense. I'm gonna see ability to adapt and adjust. And I'm going to see a script that they believe in that can get them off to a good start. God forbid with a lead.
I'm with you. Those are my hopes, not my expectations, is the thing.
I expect them to have a good script and then not take a guy who's rushed for 15 yards on 2 carries out after 2 carries. I mean, I just don't see this herky-jerkiness. I think you're going to see guys have a little more direction to get open. I think you're going to see, dare I say it, quick blinking. You're going to see decision-making, whoever's a quarterback, to get rid of the football. It's not going to be this NFL long, late developing throw at 3 or 4 levels. Oops, man coverage, 0 blitz, I have no time. You're going to see some rhythm, or you're going to, at least that's what's it's going to be geared toward. And I welcome that. Move the football, and if you got to settle for 3, so be it. But just move the football versus consecutive 3 and outs, 3 and outs, 3 and outs, 3 and outs. Just move the chains, man.
A question to both of you is, would you guys be surprised, though? Let's say Dylan Raiola is the guy on Saturday. Would you be surprised to see Dylan Raiola struggle in situations where USC goes man pressure and they're bringing 6, they're bringing 7, they're bringing 8? Would you be surprised to see Nebraska's offense struggle in those moments? Because that's what they've struggled with all year long.
Well, I just don't know that the adjustment was – we saw one hot route, didn't we, against Ohio State?
On the goal line, yeah.
Yeah, right? And that was a touchdown that was called back but or nullified. But that's the only adjustment I've honestly seen. I'm sure they've made more, but you saw it in real time the next series where Ohio State did the same thing with a blitz, and Nebraska found Naor on kind of that little mesh rub to get him on a little bit of a slant. So I think Nebraska is going to keep it simple, but I think there are answers, and Dana will have a lot of answers to some problems that USC wants to pull. And I just think it'll be far from perfect, but at least it's going to look a little bit more like football on offense. I expect that immediately.
I would think that there's going to be an element of, because of the change, there's going to be a little more maybe motivation. Now, it is odd, too, and we didn't talk about this, and it really hasn't been talked about that much. Marcus Satterfield is not gone. So it's not as though, they like the Bears or they do in the NFL. The guy's fired. He's cleaning out his office and he's gone and the new guy's in.
He's the highest paid tight ends coach in the country now.
That voice is still there, but I don't know. I don't know him. I've not been at practice, but he comes across as a fairly, even keel, low key guy. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that there's been a much louder voice in the offensive huddle on the offensive side of the football for the past however many days. And I think it goes back, beyond Monday. So I would think that Dana Holgorsen's voice, maybe literally and figuratively speaking, has been pretty prominent in practice. So I would think that there is an attention that's been gotten. I would think the players would be, motivated by the change and that there might be a little bit more efficiency. I also wonder, and again, I'm not an offensive coordinator. I had to be. We'd be running the option. But anyway, I wonder if maybe the checks, some of the check downs will be different. That, instead of the safety blanket being a screenplay, that maybe there may be other things to, audible into. And a lot of what Dana Holgorsen does is done, at, in terms of play calling. It's what happens at the line of scrimmage. It's not quite the, a run and shoot of Mouse Davis and John Jenkins, but, that was all about recognition. And, David Klingler, who was the quarterback at Houston back in the early 1980s, he and I worked together. And I asked him one time, how big was your playbook? Because, they had all these patterns and things that they would do, and they'd score 80 points a game. And he grabs a manila folder and he goes, he writes, all the 11 players along, on offense. And then he just did route trees, 1 through 9, 1 through 9, 1 through 9, 1 through 9, 1 through 9. And at the line of scrimmage, it was looking at the matchups across from the receivers. And he would just call out what route I want you to run at the line of scrimmage. 940 to 56, if they had 5 guys in a pattern or something. That's how simple he goes with the folder back and goes, that's our playbook. So maybe there's something that's simplified with Nebraska that, things are at the line, you see the matchups, and yeah, you're inside the 15 seconds of the communication in the helmet, but maybe there's more line recognition and not going with the play that you called in the huddle, and you were going to jam that square peg into that round hole, and it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to throw that square peg into the flat and see if that works, and it doesn't. So I think the change is going to motivate players. I think that's going to do them well, and I do think that maybe there's going to be some simplified play calling. Now, the wild card, too, is if Dylan Raiola is unable to go or can only go for a little while, and now you've got Heinrich Harburg and a little more of a quarterback run threat. That changes things pretty dramatically, and maybe you see both of them.
And I did sidestep the question. I've been sitting here thinking, expecting to see. Can I change this up just a little bit and give what I'm expecting to learn on Saturday? It kind of goes hand in hand. I'm expecting that we'll have a much better idea after the game on Saturday if Nebraska's issues offensively this year have been guys that fail to execute, or if Nebraska was running a scheme that did not set guys up for success and execution, if you follow what I'm saying. I think
absolutely.
Well by the end of the game, we will have a much, much, much better idea if Nebraska just doesn't have the guys offensively, or if Nebraska's scheme did not set those guys up for success. I do think we'll have a much better idea of that.
Well, let's put our money down. What do you think it's been? And the easy answer is both, and that's the correct answer. But I think there's just been too much of an element of a guy that's calling plays that he likes. And yeah, that can and have worked. Seam route against Ohio or against UCLA, right? That's the neon light the last 2 weeks. That was there. So that's an execution thing. That being said, there's so many things you call that can't. There's no way they worked in practice. And I'm talking the perimeter blocking.
Well, yeah, and that's like, to that point, the perimeter blocking is a great example here of like.
And you're talking to Mr. Perimeter Blocker. Dana's calling. He lived the short passing game.
Well, the thing is with the perimeter blocking, I'm going to use it as an example. You have guys that haven't been executing it. That's been clear. You haven't gone and found guys that can execute it. So if you have guys that can't execute perimeter blocking on, like, let's say a screen, that's the point where you change this scheme up and don't ask guys to do things that they've already shown they cannot do, right? That's why I look at the scheme, is because not only has it not felt like Nebraska's necessarily tried to find guys that can do it. How many times have you and I heard in our comment section on our afternoon show, Schmitty, everyone asking, man, Malachi Coleman's got the body to be a blocker. He's shown it on the field. Let's see Malachi Coleman go out there and do some blocking. Well, maybe they're trying to save his red shirt, whatever. We haven't even seen it. No one's experimented with the idea of, well, let's see if Malachi Coleman can go out there and perimeter block. The one guy we've seen has been Bullock, but he gets his 2 snaps a game and it's right back to the sideline. Like, Nebraska,
and they know it's coming if he's out there.
So Nebraska has not even tried to go find guys that can go out there and execute what you're asking them to do, which leads me to believe, well, you don't have confidence that there's anyone on your roster that can go out there and execute what you want them to do. If that's true, why has the scheme not changed to not ask guys to go out there and do what they've already shown that they can execute? That's why I lean 100% scheme. That's why
it's called adjustments. It's called adjustments in the second half. It's adjustments at the beginning of the game, and it's adjustments with your personnel.
That's why I think that question of, is it guys not executing or is it coaches not setting up for success? Learning that, if we get a better idea of that on Saturday, is one of the most important things we can learn in this game on Saturday.
I think the will to execute has waned as the season has gone on.
You know why? Because they don't think it's going to work.
That's partly true, yeah. But I think from the beginning of the season, and it was against UTEP, and then you have a great half against Colorado, and you did just enough to win that game. You were never in danger of losing that game. You dominate, and then you get Northern Iowa, then you get a little tougher opponents, and then you're not confident maybe in the call, and then the will to execute is probably not there, and that includes receiver blocking, which is that's why I've always said you need to have Ron Brown bring in his Reggie Ball, Dave Sizes, Brendan Holbein, John Vedral,
don't forget Abdul
and Abdul Muhammad. Let's have a little Warriors meeting in Central Park and teach you how to get it done. So I would think if you're Dana Holgorsen, one of your challenges is to call some of those receivers over and say, look, a couple of you guys, if you want to make some money, you got 3 weeks to earn it. And yeah, you might go to Indy for the combine in April, and or whenever that is, in February or March, and the draft is in April. And yeah, you might, wear the suit well, and you might put up some big numbers, but what you put on film is what people are really going to remember, unless you drop a 4.21. But this is the opportunity for, those guys to win a sixth and to, make six figures or more next year. And I think that's the challenge you have to put out to some of those guys. It's time to put something on tape, because the first 2/3 of the season, it has not happened. And you have gone from being a high profile ACC wide receiver or a very highly regarded prospect out of Wyoming and Texas. And it's not just the fact that you're playing with a true freshman 5-star quarterback. You've had opportunities to make him look like a 5-star quarterback, and that has not happened. So my challenge to you, Dana says to them, is go out and earn it. You're probably earning some money right now, and you owe it to people to collect that check, to earn that check. But if you really want to make the big money, these next 3 weeks and a potential bowl game are your time. Because right now what you have on tape probably is not going to get it done.
Well, and also, not just the older guys. You look at the younger guys, too. Dana Holgorsen and says, hey, you want to come play for my offense next year? We got roster limits coming to college football. You want to come play? I mean, 3 games left. For most of the guys, the younger guys, red shirts are off the table now. You can play in the 3 games and still maintain your red shirt. Do you want to play in this offense next year? Or am I going to have to go to the transfer portal this offseason? Because let's be clear, that's one more big thing with Dana Holgorsen. His name is going to carry sway in the transfer portal. People of my age still remember very, very distinctly that Geno Smith and Tavon Austin offense. You can look at that, or Dana Holgorsen can go in there and say, hey, do you know who went and found Tank Dell and developed him, turned him into an NFL player in my offense? It was me. Like, the name still carries weight. Roster limits are coming. There's guys, younger guys, that are still somewhat new to this program, that they're playing for a spot within this offense next year. The offensive philosophy has changed. Go show me something. What can you show me to prove that I need to maintain a roster spot for you and I don't need to go shopping and recruiting over you this offseason?
You have 2 teams. USC has lost 4 of 5. You have Nebraska that's lost 3 straight. I'm kind of interested. We think you'll get the Dana bump if you're Nebraska. A little more energy. The other way, with Miller Moss getting thrown under the bus, driven over by the bus, and then being backed over by the bus.
And then getting on the bus to Michigan or wherever he's going to go.
By old Lincoln, the visor wearer. How's that going to play in the locker room? Yeah, there's been some picks. He cost you some ball games, but he's kept you in some ball games. I mean, he's the number 2 passer in the Big Freaking 10 that just got benched because you're the problem, son. So I wonder how they react. And quite honestly, they look at Nebraska. There's a little buzz I'm hearing from out west that they think Nebraska's just the warm-up act before they get ready for UCLA. And then they've got the Fighting Irish. I mean, it's Nebraska, it's UCLA, it's Notre Dame to close for Lincoln Riley, who started off the year with an LSU win. And then it's been sideways. They have been brutal in close ball games. Stop me if you heard that before.
Well, I don't think Matt Rhule's seat is hot, okay?
No.
But I'm saying it's warm, but it's hot under Lincoln Riley. And it's not Jimbo Fisher move-on money, but it's close, and they have people that are ready to sign the check. So what is the air out there is a whole lot different. I was amused that they got put on probation by the NCAA for a rule that no longer exists, and
for this
fined $50,000. Well, Lincoln Riley didn't have to pay it, but he earns that at their first 2 drives of the game. So, it's just some disarray out there with that team, and it is not what they expected. Well, and so, I'm not saying the Rhule's under any pressure in that regard. His pressure was, you got to do something to shake up your program and do it now and get ahead of the game in that regard. So it's warm, but it's not hot. But
keep your guys,
Lincoln Riley,
thinking about coming here interested, and Matt Rhule did that with his change.
Yeah, and Lincoln Riley's seat is hot.
And another thing to consider is what's Lincoln Riley's care level with his seat being hot. I'm with you. You're going to see a whole bunch of empty seats, I think, out at the Coliseum on Saturday. Empty seats, that's what gets coaches fired in this business. If the fans have apathy, Schmidt talks about what you're hearing from the West Coast. Yeah, all 100 USC fans that are showing up for this game on Saturday, they aren't giving Nebraska any credit. But, you don't know what's happening inside the building. And that's the question to me is, does Lincoln Riley care if he gets fired at the end of the year, or is he ready to give up and go find a spot in some NFL coaching staff, go be an offensive analyst for the Rams and try to turn it into an offensive coordinator spot, get out of NIL, get out of the transfer portal? It's a real discussion you got to have in college football now is, what's the care level of Lincoln Riley to actually get USC right? Or did he develop his Heisman winner and, hey, you know what? The Bears might be looking for an offensive coordinator.
I'm just going to say the Bears. Not only their OC, but Eberflus is probably gone. He might get the gig in Chicago, and people will be going, what?
Who else is going to be looking for a coach? The Cowboys are going to be looking for a coach this offseason.
Go to Big D.
That's another one you got to look at. Would
Oklahoma hire him back?
No.
I'm half joking, but
no.
They may hate the guy, but they were good under him.
Yeah, but the way he left, I don't think they'll forget.
I know.
Oklahoma's another one that they dumped their offensive coordinator. Like 3 weeks into the season.
That's why you go get Dana now.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So, guys, let's wind it up. Nebraska, USC, are we ready for predictions? Do we want to go there, or do we want to just stay with, hey, Nebraska will play well and will play better? Or I have no idea. It's going to be a bleep show both ways, and tune in and grab some popcorn. Are you coming over for a steak, Doleman?
I might have to, yeah. I might have to do that.
I think we should make our predictions just with what I said in mind from earlier. Be prepared to burn it on Saturday morning. It's not going to matter. Throw everything out the window. We're going to probably sound like idiots making our predictions, but I'm prepared to make it.
All right, that's fine.
All right, I'm not going to throw the records out in this one. These two teams are combined 9-9. So I think the final score is going to be 9-9.
There's no more ties, Bill.
Well, I think Nebraska is going to give the kind of effort that they gave it at Ohio State. I don't think you'll see Indiana. I think you'll see a team that's motivated by change. I think you'll see a more efficient offense, maybe by accident. But I think the offense will be better. I think the defense will also give an effort that's pretty good. They'll get after the quarterback. I'd love to see the kind of effort out of Nebraska's defense that Utah's defense gave against BYU, and they got robbed in that game. But they were all out, and they went after him. And you got maybe you have to make Maeva beat you, and maybe he does. But at least got to give an effort. So I think this will be a game in which Nebraska comes out, plays like they did at Ohio State, and instead of not getting the win, they do get the win, 85-14.
Okay.
See, I like the 9-9 though, because it's you can't have.
We got in trouble for that.
You can't have it in college football anymore. But also, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen Big Ten officials screw up interpretations of the rules this year. So maybe it could happen.
I'm going to go too much mobile quarterback for USC, too many athletes for USC. And I think the line of scrimmage is still a problem when it comes to pressure after Nebraska's quarterback, whether that be Dillon or Double H, and USC 31, Nebraska 20. But it looks better.
I personally think what we should be talking about this week more than the offense. I understand why we're talking about the offense. I've spent plenty of time talking about the offense, but with this game, more important side of the ball is the defense. New quarterback coming in for USC. You've had back-to-back-to-back bad secondary performances. The D-line's been hit or miss this year. I think it's a bounce-back type performance this week. I think they're PO'd about how that UCLA game went down. In any good team, I think the defense would probably take a little bit of the blame for what's going on offensively. That's how good teams operate, is you stand up for the man, the brother next to you. So I think the defense is going to feel some added stress from this week because they're probably going to feel partly responsible for what's going on the offensive side of the ball. So So I think we get a bounce-back performance from Husker defense. I think it's still somewhat lower scoring, but I think Nebraska pulls this one out. Final score, 21-17.
I think this is a mental game. I agree that they probably have better athletes, but Nebraska's has a bit of a jolt, and I think that jolt will last. USC just, man, that seems like they checked out.
It's
for some reason.
It's very possible.
The coach, the president's resigning. Whatever this little NCAA thing I'm amused by. But there's just a pile on out there, and not fight on. It's piled on, and I could see
that's
that
the title: fight on or piled on.
Yeah, I could see where they're like, but if they get down, maybe they get disinterested, and maybe they're looking ahead to UCLA and Notre Dame and Nebraska catches them like they caught Ohio State looking ahead a little bit. So, but I think the mental aspect of this is really kind of fascinating.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. Elijah will be live and in person at the Coliseum, and we'll be back at it Sunday morning for the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live at 10:30. And that's Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and we'll talk to you this weekend.